Hello, listeners. It's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Visionary Voices, the College President's Playbook, is an insightful podcast dedicated to the strategic minds leading today's higher ed institutions. Each episode brings a unique perspective from visionary and tech-forward college presidents, chancellors, and other high-level academic leaders, diving into the complexities and nuances of running a modern educational institution. This show is hosted by Dr. Brian Gross, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Athletics at Hartwick College, and is a valuable resource for current and aspiring leaders in academia, offering a playbook of visionary ideas and practical solutions for the ever-evolving landscape of higher ed. New episodes drop every other Wednesday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Visionary Voices wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome to Generation AI, the podcast where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I'm your host, Ardis Kadiu, joined by my insightful co-host, JC Bonilla. JC, how are you doing today?
I'm in the April spring vibes. Beautiful day in New York, sunny. It feels 2024, it's all in. It feels that investments that we've done in 2024 are starting to showcase and good vibes. You know, sometimes you have a good Friday and sometimes you have a bad Friday. We're recording on a Friday and today's a good Friday. Family, work, life, all the things are in check. Ask me in about 49 seconds, probably because something is going to fall out of check. But having a good one, my friend. What about you? How's the ecosystem of the Kaduis? You know, from life, work, balance, family, company. How's it going, Ardis?
Things are great. It's been an incredible, busy first couple of months on the business side. We're moving forward and accelerating on the product side, accelerating on client growth, onboarding, go-to-market. So we're moving very quickly, and it's been exhausting, to be honest. So I'm looking forward next week. The kids are off from schools and just a nice little trip planned for a few days. So I'm looking forward to kind of decompress a little bit and catch my thoughts.
I love that. Well, the best of time to you and Diana and the kids. Enjoy it. Well-deserved break. And maybe this time you'll come back from the vacations and I will catch you up on the amazing things that AI has covered in a week, because it feels like you've been doing that catch up for me.
Exactly. The AI drama continues. Everything gets accelerated. And today, we hopefully are bringing a topic that is a little bit timeless, but also something that, JC, you and we've been building dashboards and we've been building intelligence and insights now for a really long time. And this is a topic that is core to what you do at VaynerMedia. And it's an artifact that I look at every single day and what we do at Element as well. So today we're going to talk about reporting and insight generation under the influence of AI. JC, your job depends on bringing insights and bringing reporting, and your whole team around data analytics at VaynerMedia reports to you because that's the value that you provide to your client. The same thing from our side at Element 451.
I'm an accountant. I count numbers and we report them.
Exactly. We do the same thing, like bringing that data and insights. And as a CEO, I live and die by my dashboards and I live and die by the metrics or the KPIs. Now, I'm going to be naive if I look at those dashboards and in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, this is exactly the numbers. I need to actually go in and, ask questions about those numbers or those KPIs that are being shown. And that's one of the things that perhaps you can kind of put a little light on. It's like, what is this artifact of the dashboard of the business intelligence, a dashboard that we know today, and how has it evolved or how do you see it?
And the way we are going to have this conversation, right? I want everybody to start thinking about three important things of what a dashboard is and where it's going, right? Because the tension today is that dashboards and AI are going to have a child. And that new child is basically what we're anticipating we're going to come and discuss. But on dashboard, it's a gigantic amount of work that is static. and suffers with adoption. What does it mean? A gigantic amount of work. When we visualize and we see your beautiful Tableau, I don't know, Power BI, whatever technology that you have, right? There's so many amazing providers, right? Or your Element dashboard for all the Element users. There's engineering behind the scenes. There's data intelligence, data pipelines, so much infrastructure that gets the data. And sometimes humans are just doing the manual work so it can be presented there, right? And iterations. It's static because a dashboard cooks up the use cases of how Ardis, the CEO, may look at the data, or Ardis, the analyst, or JC, the accountant, right? And then we cut those things. We anticipate them, and then we build them. That's the static aspect. And adoption is because what happens with a dashboard, most likely is that it launches, and on day 1, everyone celebrates. On day 30, maybe 50% of the users are no longer logging in. It's highly uncommon to find a dashboard that has been around for a year and everyone is using it and logging in. It's really common to actually find the other, right?
It's like a car. As soon as it walks off the lot, it loses 30% of its value.
So in terms of product, what we know is that dashboards struggle with stickiness and they start getting basically adoption by micro users as opposed to a large breadth of users in your kind of domain.
I know from my side, the main thing that I care about is the data. Can I trust this data that's behind this visualization?
Oh my gosh. And then part of the adoption, right, it's because, data trust, data integrity issues, and all those type of things. So let's basically ground all that with a statement that I pass to our teams consistently. It's highly unlikely you're going to get a pat on the back for the dashboard, right? I'm going to do that because you work in my team and I know how hard it is. But the client, the vendor, the person who logs into the technology, they expect that dashboard. But God forbid the dashboard is wrong. You'll get fired for it. So it's those things that highly unlikely you're going to get promoted for an awesome dashboard, but you could get fired for a dashboard, right? So it's one of those product features that it's table stakes and it has that complicated tension. Ardis, dashboards one-on-one. So, and I want to do this as a historical aspect. Do you know where the word dashboard comes from?
The dashboard of my car?
Right? So the dashboard, right, is this visualization of components, right? In the 60s, executives started asking their basically reports. I need to have an executive visualization that actually looks like a dashboard in an airplane, in a car, that tells me the health of the organization. And they are actually called DSS, Decision Support Systems. Incredible amount of work was needed, mostly manual, as you can imagine, in the 60s, where professionals were basically logging in the idea of this is the number that's important. That actually arrives to the cousin or the biggest dependency on the dashboard is called the KPI. What do I report?
Key performance indicator.
Key performance indicators, or about key performance drivers. That's also a name that is thrown there. KPIs and KPDs, right? Drivers. So you start seeing that evolution of what is it I need to do as an organization and the demystification of, can I report it in 5? Can I report it in 3 numbers, the KPIs? And that's a whole body of work that is really difficult. You become what you measure, and measuring right, it's a whole art and a science. But then decision support systems in the 60s start basically becoming that. So naturally, with the evolution of information technology in the 80s, decision support systems start evolving to the next generation of integrating the data pools in a automated way, because it's still the 80s, and start visualizing, which then brings one more word, business intelligence, BI. How many of us think of dashboards as business intelligence, right?
Right. Yeah. I was actually going to correct you before and say, hey, nobody thinks of dashboards. They think about BI, and that's what we get asked quite a bit right now.
Right, that's the point. Who comes and calls this dashboard DSS, right? In the 60s, that's how they were called, right? And then by the 80s, we call them business intelligence. But in today, we use the word dashboard to really start thinking about, all these kind of visualizations and reporting that kind of helps us understand that. Key important things is it requires technology for automation, right? The intelligence. Key point is that it visualizes performance indicators, KPI, that summarize the performance of a really complex team organization, and it tries to basically do the rules of threes, right? 3 important things that tell me 3 other things. So there may be a hierarchy. So a KPI gets broken up and things of that sort. So that's basically the construct of a dashboard. You can obtain the same thing on a report. You can create a flat file in an Excel sheet that looks like a dashboard. Crazy enough, many of our clients today, they have a dashboard and they want the PowerPoint of the dashboard. So you actually copy paste in the components and the graphics, right? The screenshots. But it's basically, that's good old dashboards. Let me ask you a question. When you go back and, I've seen you do dashboard. What's a good dashboard? Knowing that it's a combination of technology pools, it summarizes the business in a nuanced way, right? And it has these kind of layers of analytics and data narrative. What's a good dashboard? And can you think of examples in your practice?
So, I can tell you from the business perspective as a B2B company or as an edtech company, but one of the things that we also do a lot of is putting these dashboards together for our clients. And we really call them insights. And so they have certain components to it. They have, big ass numbers. Basically, those are your large KPIs that you put on the dashboard. And when we think about a dashboard, there's two components to it, right? There's the report that you're mentioning, and that's one dimension. The KPI is this one number that can be represented over time or not, but it's just one visualization, one dimension. And you put a bunch of these metrics or these KPIs together, and that's where you get a dashboard. So for us, for our partners, what we call a funnel report, just like you mentioned, like we call it a funnel dashboard, it's actually representing how have your students moved from an inquiry to an application start, to an application completed, to an admit, to a deposit, to a current student. So like the movement of those, we can see it in the business, right? Because that's what we're measuring. So that's a really good dashboard to show you how things are moving along. From a business perspective, I actually look at our pipeline in terms of our growth and in terms of how many deals we have in the pipeline. So I need to see the pipeline. I need to see the progression of how things are moving along. And are we going to meet our goals or not?
Everybody, that's the tension that I wanted to bring up. In a way, I was asking Ardis this question because I knew he was going to end up on that second one. Many of you are going to come and say, that dashboard is amazing. Why? Because behind the scenes, the technology to pull the data is very sophisticated, okay? But it looks like shit. Or you're going to come and tell me that dashboard is amazing because it looks so fantastic. It's crisp, it's sexy, the functionality. It allows me to basically present it to my board and I was like, wow. But behind the scenes, it's a nightmare. And your analysts hate every morning. They hate themselves when they have to basically feed the goddamn dashboard. So we're really thinking about, it's a combination of two worlds that have made dashboards a really difficult task to marry, which is the back end and the front end need to be awesome, both of them for us to say that's a great dashboard. Fast forward to higher education. Dashboards in higher ed, which Ardis and I could probably write a PhD on, right? Start with, Excel reports. I don't know if you ever got an email from me back in the day when we were both running teams, but I used to report, thousands of, actually millions of dollars in revenue for the school on Excel reports, right? And here's the number of students that are coming, how many of them are for your program and whatnot. It was a good old cut of an Excel report. God forbid, I made an error on the Excel report, so I needed to retract the email and resend it again. Today, many schools still operate that way. So that's basically your one-on-one reporting. Usually it's going to be a extract of a spreadsheet that summarizes a funnel, whatever KPIs you have, and you take a screenshot of the whole work and you distribute, right? Then ERPs, which is this technology that we're saying is fundamental in the evolution of dashboards, become a thing in universities. We call them SISs, right? Student support systems. And this is where, oh my gosh, now I can load my applications there, right? This is still not CRMs, right? CRMs come later, right? And then you start kind of getting the partnership between, I would say, institutional research, becoming better at pulling the numbers. You start kind of getting, student records and all those type of things, organizations kind of entering data. So the reporting became a bit more nuanced. So this is where I would say the second shift, the one that takes us to today's state of the evolution of dashboards in higher education, is what happens. At that stage, we just threw more technology in higher education. Usually, it's a combination of CRMs, where Element plays, and visualization tools. Many schools have Tableau. Many schools have a CRM. Most schools have a type of SIS, right? And these three things are kind of playing together for a generation of a dashboard, right? Ardis, anything to add on that kind of, I would say, components that make the evolution of a dashboard very higher education contextual?
So if I understand you correctly, JC, to kind of sum this up, we have the data sources, which are your SIS or the databases where the data comes in. It can be an Excel spreadsheet. You can consider that a data source as well. So you have your data sources, and then you have a visualization layer on top of that. So that's the tableaus of the world that are coming in. So the Excel reporting or charts that you were able to do in there, they weren't sexy enough or they weren't good enough, like they weren't sophisticated enough. So we came along and we said, you know what? We want to do much more sophisticated type of visualization. So we have Tableau and we have Power BI or Google Looker, for example. That's another one.
100%, right? And the thing that higher education hasn't evolved towards to in the art and science of dashboards is that they're professionals who are trained to basically do the whole balance of data sources, whether it's the student records or SIS, and the art of visualization, whether it could be Tableau and whatnot. So what you have is sometimes an admissions professional or a student affairs professional or institutional research, right? Dabbling among these disparate systems and trying to visualize. So the dashboard game in higher education, it's not top notch. You end up with, it tells the story, right? But behind the scenes is a mess. Or they have very sophisticated, they recruited IT and the people who run the SIS, they know how to do the connectors, but the front end, the visuals are not fantastic, right?
Right. So you need a data analyst. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the profession of reporting. For example, in my team, there's about 80 people who specialize on the art of the analytics narrative. So our dashboards are great looking dashboards, right? And the clients pay for it because at the end of the day, a CMO wants to bring a screenshot.
So you guys are building stories. You're not building dashboards. That's what they're paying for.
That's exactly what I'm trying to tell you, right? That in higher education, my perspective is that we have the components, but the art of the dashboard hasn't really taken place unless, and I'm not saying this because you're here, right? You get a technology like Element that for their specific dashboards, it's fantastic, right? Or, other technologies that you have and it has an embedded dashboard. So that's for the product. But when we think about the business case of a university, right, which will be the business of students producing, educators or whatever profession you're trying to do, and then it takes you outside admissions and, or admissions blended with academic affairs, student affairs, alumni, that's a totally different ballgame. I've been monitoring this for the past 3 years, and I'm starting to see a little bit of reporting jobs coming in, mostly in enrollment analytics professionals. Some schools are going for that. And I think those are the professionals that we're talking about. But just keep in mind the dashboarding, to do it right, it's a profession. And many of us in higher education are hacking the process, and the dashboards need to come and do much better. But Ardis, here's the tension. I want to introduce something that's called semantic search, which is before AI came in, I thought is starting to make the most interesting use case of how a dashboard should work. So then we can then layer the aspect of AI, right? So can you talk to people about what is semantic search, right? Because I think the first generation of semantic search, you and I saw it maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So AI was not doing what it's doing today. And it was kind of where you and I started to move with dashboards. So what is a semantic search and why is it important?
So the semantic search around dashboarding, or at least around data, is the ability for us to come in natural language and query a data source. And that language or that query can then get converted into whatever the source is either SQL or Python or some other language in order to pull out the reporting. So we don't need to know the underlying query language for the data source. We don't need to know the formulas. We don't need to know how to do all those complex, queries. We can just semantically ask in a certain way and then pull out the visualization because that gets translated into queries underneath. Did I get that right?
100%. Here's semantic search in a dashboard. How many applicants do I have today? And it gives you a graphic. It looks great. You went and you use your language, right? Think about a prompt. Hey, how many kids are joining my event tomorrow, right? That's semantic search. Here's how dashboards work today. From this table, look up the column or the name records and give me the name and count them. What happened there, right, is that you're making these instructions, and this is where dashboards are really complicated. Number one, institutional research calls students records. In admissions, they call students leads. And in alumni, they call them partners. And we're talking about the same human, right? So you end up with this disparate aspect of semantics, and it's tough to have the joins, but that's the back end, right? So semantically, it doesn't matter. And this is the layer of AI that is starting to become really interesting, that right now we've solved that problem. A kid, a student, a partner, and whatever else you want to call it, a lead, right? All can be the same thing. And Ardis has taken us into how this can be used in kind of a vector graph type of database. That is a problem that is now being solved. And semantic search is basically what has started.
Hey everyone, Ardis here, founder and CEO of Element 451. I'm thrilled to invite you to the Engage Summit in Raleigh, June 25th and 26th. It's our annual gathering where AI and higher education come together in exciting ways. A lot of the sessions will focus on cutting-edge AI that are reshaping student experience, they're enhancing staff productivity, and offering deep insights into your data. Imagine 2 days filled with hands-on sessions, real success stories, and the chance to network with top minds in the field. You live with practical, transformative takeaways as you learn how AI can foster a more personalized, efficient approach from recruiting to student success and even to alumni engagement. Oh, and the best part? The Engage Summit is incredibly affordable. Try discount code Enrollify50, that's Enrollify50, and you can register for just $99. So join me and many of my fellow Enrollify Network creators at Engage Summit this coming June. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there.
So Ardis, that's the state of dashboarding in higher education. You are closer to this problem than me. Anything you think that is important to add before we go into how AI and dashboards now become a thing?
Look, there's a lot of limitations right now, and we're still in a place where data is still siloed, and we still haven't solved the problem of data warehousing or data lakes, so to speak. So the locality and how do we bring all these data points together? I think a lot of institutions and a lot of IT leaders over the past 5 years are dealing with this problem, and they're still in the midst of solving it. So what we're going to talk about today and kind of the evolution of the dashboard is more around, well, how do I get value out of that, right? We're not talking about, the work that needs to get done in order to get the data in one place and all that. We're talking about the admissions professional or the provost or the president, like they coming in and asking questions because they want to get value. So it's like, how does that then translate into, the business value? Like that's what we want to talk about today, like the evolution of the dashboard as a mechanism for providing that value, where at least I think that is going to go away and it's going to not exist anymore because we now have the capability of tying the question that we want much closer to the source of data that we have without having this intermediary visualization or intermediary representation of that data.
100%. So dashboards, let's be controversial. We think that the role of the dashboard as we know it is dead, right?
Right.
AI presents a great opportunity that allows us to be more dynamic with the data sources, more dynamic with the way the narrative gets presented, and more nuanced with how I think about my business, not that static, that my KPIs are 5. Like, let me make my own KPI and visualize it on this spot, right? And I want to do all that semantically, right? All these ingredients that we said are needed for dashboards, and they kind of started to already knock the doors of higher education. We want to take it to the next level. So the way I love to do this is a bit of role playing. So I'm going to present a capability that I know can be done with AI, but it hasn't touched dashboard lands. So I'd love for you and I to read around it. So for example, number 1, automated creation and updates. I don't need to have the 30 hours needed to do in a wireframe on what the dashboard is going to look like so everyone approves it. I get this automatic creation of my visuals with AI. How could that work?
When we talk about AI, we talk about generative AI specifically, right? Because we have predictive AI and dashboards, and we're not going to confuse those two. So generative AI is able to produce the frameworks of those dashboards. So it's understanding that, hey, I'm asking this type of question. I'm breaking that down into what are the data points or the dimensions of this type of question. And based on that, this is the best way to represent this type of a metric. I can represent it as a gauge if it's just one number, or if I asked over time, I can represent it as a time series data, or with X being the time. So depending on how you ask it, there is a natural representation of the question to what makes sense as a visualization for this. So that's where AI can come in and say, hey, based on these patterns, I know that, this is the best way to represent this type of question that you're asking me.
Sally asked me for a trend, so all of a sudden I give you a time series analysis. Bobby is asking for distribution of gender. That looks like a pie chart, but if it's more than 2 genders, so a more 5 kind of DEI visualization of genders, maybe pie charts. So what we have is that the proxy of interrogation, semantically, it understands in the data what it is. It recognizes the type of field it is, and then it recommends the best graphic for it. So all of a sudden, automatic dashboards powered by AI, it means that every dashboard is different depending on how you set that question, that prompt. Adaptive and evolution, right? What does it mean that it adapts?
So one of the things that we deal all the time with is I have a funnel report and I'm providing all of the student types in that funnel report, right? And I also have next to it, I have a breakdown on what type of students there are. It's an international student, domestic student, or some kind of a cohort or segment that I have on it. So all I have to do now, if I visualize that, is click on the international kind of part of the pie chart. And now the whole dashboard is actually just scoped out to just that audience, right? So this is evolution. This is how I'm thinking about this. So you're filtering things out and you're moving things out, and that's the nature of that evolution. So it becomes more personalized to how I'm interacting with it. Did I get that correct?
Perfect. And I'm going to give you a narrative. I love narratives. Ardis, on my screen, you can see, what am I holding?
That's your TV remote. Oh boy, that's an old one.
How many buttons does it have?
Like 1,000,000 buttons.
What am I holding now?
Your Apple remote?
How many buttons does it have?
3 buttons.
The adaptation that I'm talking about is that KPIs are repetitive. The narrative of a dashboard that is death by KPIs can start evolving that, 55 people have asked me about this visual, this type of, interrogation, right? And I've generated these 55 times. So maybe it becomes a universal KPI, right? Because in admissions, you're going to start with your funnel report. Kind of know that, right? But then what other very contextualized things to your specific nature of the business, if you're a school that it's more faith affiliated versus an athletic school, I'm pretty sure that is going to give the nuance. And one of the aspects of evolution in adaptation is that it learns from that repetitive pattern. Now, repetition, it means that it's looking for symmetry on the ask the data or like repetitive things. Replicability and repeatability. Oh, that's a mouthful.
A lot of abilities.
Now, this is the nuance of dashboards that I really love to even take my team on. I care for dashboards to see the norm, but I also want dashboards and the new AI-powered dashboards to be all about anomalies. Anomalies are the game in how you win. They're good anomalies and bad anomalies, right? So I'm having a heart attack. That's an anomaly. In the signature of the heartbeat, there's a spike and they send you to a specialist, right? Or I'm having an anomaly. There's too many deposits coming in at a rate that is unprecedented. I need to know about that. Why? Where? My event oversaturated. The RSVPs open up within 24 hours is done.
Some of them are good anomalies, right?
Exactly. That's my point. The word when we use anomaly detection, right, which is triggered by a notification, an anomaly, it's a peak in the normal distribution, the normal behavior of a report of data. And many times it's a good thing. So Ardis, how do you start thinking about proactive notification, knowing that AI is the best there is, 10 times better than humans on anomaly detection?
Yeah.
Paint that picture on dashboards.
Well, I'm going to give you one, not a story, but that's just a framing from my side. one of the things that I ask my team all the time is they come and they say, hey, here are the numbers. And I'm like, okay, is that good, bad? Right? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what's the benchmark on this? Like, is the benchmark higher than the number that you're giving me and then we've gone down, or is it lower and we've gone up? So the trend analysis or the movement is actually the signal that we want. And that's what we're talking about, is that these anomalies, either the trend is actually a lot better than we expect or a lot higher, or the trend is a lot lower than we expect. So those are the anomalies or the peaks that we're talking about. Like, I don't care about the actual number. The number means nothing without benchmarking it. So any type of dashboard or any type of question or report is going to be a comparative from a business value perspective. Is how are we doing? Are we going in the right direction? Are we going in the wrong direction? And how fast are we going in that right direction? Are we going to hit our goals or not hit our goals?
I love that. And I was having this conversation with someone recently that with AI-powered dashboards and reporting, what it does is that it gives back the time to the analyst to basically start interrogating the data that way. Because many times the analyst literally completes the report on the 11th hour and doesn't have the time to interrogate and like socialize these numbers and internalize them. So the pressure to the analyst, like, so what does that mean? Is that good or bad? Sometimes it's unfair because it takes so much time to do it behind the scenes. But this is where it needs to be going. Speaking of where it needs to be going, a good AI-powered dashboard needs to enhance understanding, right? I'm just going to bring a little bit of Ardis energy here. Multimodal, you get excited about all these new features. And we spoke about chatbots and conversational chatbots. So can you paint a picture of how should a dashboard, and don't give me a like pie in the sky thing, like be the engineer that you are. How could a dashboard integrate chatbots and text and be multimodal, knowing that technology speaking, it can be done, but can it be? Can I literally start reporting on, hey, how many people in my chatbot today are sad? Because it could be doing sentiment analysis, right? And then all of a sudden, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So enhanced understanding, how would you paint that picture of where dashboard should be going in that capability?
Oh boy, I mean, okay, so let's take a look from the reason why generative AI is really good at dashboards or answering these questions is because what happens is that there's an intermediary that gets produced, and that's code. So the generative AI, we can give it a schema of a table or a database or a data source, and we can pass in all the metadata around that information, and it has that in the context. And now we can ask it questions around it. And what it's able to do is produce intermediary code that is SQL code that it understands. It's looked at a lot of SQL code in the past, or even Python code with pandas or other types of libraries, but it's producing intermediary code in order to answer your question, right? So that's where generative AI becomes really important. So now we remove the analyst altogether from the beginning because the code gets produced for the individual data sources that comes in. And then further than that, that code that gets produced will give you, let's say, the answer in rows, or it's going to give you those answers as just one number, or it's going to give it to you as a series of numbers. Now you take that data, and now again, the Gen AI can write code in order to produce a visualization. So it can use a Python library in order to say, here is the data frame that the SQL code generated. Take that data and then create a visualization. So it's, again, writing code to create the visualization for you. So that's how these generative AI solutions work right now around data. So they're not necessarily bringing the data into the context and trying to do math in there. They're actually using code and code interpretation and tools in order to get you the visualization, in order to query the data, because we know that a lot of folks have, again, we talked last time during our chatbot capabilities around hallucinations and RAG and the retrieval augmented generation. Well, in this case, it's very similar. It's pulling data from a data source, but it's producing code and it's using tools in order to get us those final results. Now, when you think about visualizations, like vision as well, right? So multimodal models, it's like what we can do today is actually have a feedback loop so it can produce, a chart for you. And you can go the other way around, right? You can use generative AI model to say, here's a screenshot of a visualization. Can you analyze this for me and tell me if this is good or bad? What would you recommend as well? That is very interesting. And not a lot of people are using that approach, right? Because the Gen AI with vision has seen millions and millions of visuals or graphics, and it understands like all of the nuances of, think about like you being a business intelligence expert, and you've seen maybe hundreds or thousands of dashboards. Now, these models have seen charts and graphs and data over all of the history that we have, right? They have seen those charts from the 60s. They've seen charts from the 20s, like all of the books. So they have a lot of that inference. So they can look at a chart and say, okay, this is trending on the right direction. This is trending on the wrong direction. This is a good chart. This is a bad chart. So I would say that is the benefit, because as a business owner, let me give you one example. Like there's something called the magic number in EdTech, right? Well, not EdTech, but just all startups and all companies overall. And that magic number is like the cost of acquisition of a particular client and how much you're spending to acquire that client and the value of it over time, right? So when you look at that number, I'm like, well, I don't know how to interpret that number, right? It's like, is it a good number? Is it a bad number? But then I had to go in and research it and see, is our numbers right? Like in terms of the business that we have. So in that context, Gen AI, and actually I use ChatGPT and I use Perplexity to do some of that research, but it gave me really, really good examples. And I took a screenshot of it and I provided it to the chatbot and I said, hey, can you marry the information that I'm giving you right now with the knowledge that you have on these type of outcomes or business values and provide me feedback on it, which is, incredible, right? I don't know if I went into a tangent over here.
Look, and this is a good recall of our episode on conversational chatbots. This capability of enhanced understanding is centered on the ability for it to do retrieval, that RAG across multiple systems, but then start to train skills on our dashboards to then do prediction, benchmarking, sentiment analysis, right? Recall these models. So what I'm going to summarize what you said is that the dashboard evolution towards, we spent all this time thinking about the static use cases and how you see the data. That now is so dynamic. But what we need to shift is the status use cases of the skills we want AI to be trained against for a dashboard.
The insights and the interpretability of it.
Yeah, exactly right. So you're going to interpret against sentiment analysis, NLP. I want you to interpret against, I'm going to give you graphics and you're going to basically consume that and find me a benchmark and so on and so forth. Ardis, I want you to speak of customization and personalization. I'm going to speak about predictive capabilities. Two important features that all use real-time data analysis. I think that's for granted. Real-time connection. It's basically how AI in a way is powered. But in terms of predictability, a dashboard today is retrospective 90% of the time, and really advanced dashboards go into tomorrow and the future. Turning tomorrow into next week, a month from now, a year from now, and the seasonality that it has is a no-brainer for an AI-powered dashboard. What I'm trying to say is that knowing how many I have done, table stakes. Understanding where should be tomorrow and a week from now, given this trail, the seasonality, the stationary, the context, the external variables, it's also a fantastic problem that AI will solve. So the dashboards become predictive in nature and retrospective. Whereas today, a dashboard is retrospective in nature and as an add-on, very seldom is predictive. What can you say about customization and personalization, Ardis?
Well, in terms of the personalization of dashboards, I would say the best personalization is when there's no dashboard at all. And all I do is I get a box and I can ask a question in that box. And the AI is figuring out underneath exactly what to give me because it knows that I have access to only certain pieces of data. I'm the CEO, so I should be able to see the full organizational view. Or I'm the director of admissions and I can see only the academic admissions information, or I am the provost or the president and I can see all of the university data, students from admissions to recruitment to enrollment to current students. So personalization is key And generative AI opens up that door for us, but having the middle ground or the metadata layer, it becomes really, really important as well. So I think the future is, it has to be personal, right? So insights are personal depending on the day, depending on the context of, where you sit in the organization, and depending on the type of questions that you want for that specific time and place.
So Ardis, you just inspire me to something on personalization. You know how I consume data versus another person, because we're data folks. For example, I don't like to read. I see charts and I see what I need, right? Like my eyes trained to see those things. There's many people who are not like me. They like actually the explanation of the graph. So one of the interesting things in personalization is that, you know how in generative AI you say tonality, right, in the tone of JC and whatnot.
Right.
The possibility also in dashboards is that it starts learning your cognitive capabilities for ingesting data as an individual, and it actually presents the graphs that way, presents the narrative that way.
Are you saying that some of us are better at data and
bullet points or charts or hybrids?
Yeah.
100%, right? And this is a little bit of personalization. Seriously, if you give me a paragraph, I'm not going to read it. But if you give me 3 bullet points, I'm going to read them.
Yeah.
I just have that bias, and it's a cognitive bias on my learning, right? But God forbid you give some of my colleagues a chart, because literally you lost them out of the fear of that's math. But if you give them an essay or that, they'll read it and they'll read it so fast, right? So it's a really interesting thing that happens here, that performance also has a visualization aspect of how it gets presented to us, and the personalization could move in that direction. So it could be a lot of fun. Also, why not? Give me an emoji for it and then change the bar to, like, I don't know, vibes and whatnot.
That's my, you're pulling that from my board meetings, right? So my board meeting, the top chart is a list of emojis.
You have good emojis for performance.
Yeah.
Well, my friends, I hope you guys appreciated the session today. We spoke about, the evolution of dashboards seated in the 60s and why they look the way they look, what they're trying to do as the deployment of technology. And we try to paint the picture of what a dashboard is doing today, specifically under the lens of higher education. But then the true deployment of the dashboard is the one that knows how to do in real time customization, prediction, enhancement, notifications, is adaptive in nature, and creates itself in an automated way. So I look forward to seeing which is the first company that launches all these type of things, and you guys can come and hire us to give you more use cases. Ardis, you want to say goodbye to everybody?
This was great, JC. Thanks for taking us through this journey. I appreciate it. Until next time, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.